Hello, everyone.
Hello. Thank you all so much for coming tonight on the last full moon of spring. My name is Millie Harmon. I'm a co-director for Move to Amend National. I'm joined by Alfonso Saldana, also a national co-director and the producer of this event tonight. I encourage us to take a moment and think about the moon. Be reminded that transformation is actually the most natural state. And we collectively have the power to not just fight against what we do not want, to not just envision, but actually fundamentally transform and create the world we want. For those of you who are new to Move to Amend, we are a grassroots coalition of organizations and individuals across the country working together to end corporate personhood and demand real democracy as it has never existed in the United States. We are calling for a 28th Amendment, the We the People Amendment to the US Constitution, that unequivocally states that inalienable rights belong to human beings only, and that money is not a form of protected speech under the First Amendment and actually can be regulated in political campaigns. This amendment is currently introduced in the House as HJR 48 and has 93 co-sponsors. It was introduced into Congress by Representative Pramila Jayapal of Washington State. And it is the only amendment proposal to get at the precedent of Citizens United, which is to abolish all corporate constitutional rights. In the history of mass movements for social justice, we know that they were most successful when they employed a variety of strategies and tactics, when they adapted and evolved to current social and political conditions. The vision of Move to Amend is and always has been to make real the promise of a vibrant, democratic society rooted in social and economic and ecological justice that is genuinely representative and accountable to the people and not corporate interests. We have a goal to shift culture. The most dangerous threat to democracy is the mistaken belief that the US is a democracy. People and communities need assistance and support to believe that we have the right to resist corporate rule and to see that a democratic world is not only possible, but necessary for the survival of life on Earth. We are here tonight to talk about our coalition and the work that we hold most dear, and why we see the passage of the We the People Amendment to abolish corporate constitutional rights and money as speech as a first step in achieving the goals of that work. We are also really excited to announce that a handful of Move to Amend supporters and longtime donors have built up a $25,000 match fund. So donations to Move to Amend made between tonight and the 19th will be matched up to $25,000. At the end of the live stream, we will do a drawing for 3 Move to Amend t-shirts. Anyone who starts a new $28 a month donation or more, or give a one-time donation of at least $100 will be entered. We will begin our program tonight with a clip from our film, Legalized Democracy. This will take on a brief overview of why the problem didn't begin with the Citizens United v. FEC decision, and in fact began much earlier, and why it is only a people-powered movement that will be able to change that. Thank you so much. And I think Alfonso has a few more reminders for us before we show that clip.
Yes, thank you, Millie. Just to reiterate, the link, it's on the screen if you want to make a contribution. Also, please share this live stream with your friends so that more people can be aware of this movement to legalize democracy. And please also go to our YouTube channel where you can find the recording for this and many other of our great programs. And now, without any further ado, let's play the clip.
When considering the still unfolding history of these United States, the words of journalist Molly Ivins ring true. It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
Move to Amend is the only organization right now that is very clear on what needs to be done with respect to the constitutional amendment. Specifically, we declare, or we want declared that corporations are not people. And we also want to declare that money is not speech.
And a big part of the issue when creating a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy movement is an understanding of how race and racism were constructed in the United States through law, and how those laws informed our culture in much the same way those corporate rights have been constructed through the law to ensure rule of the wealthy minority over the majority, and how our culture reinforces and legitimizes that lack of democracy. Right from the very beginning, Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution defined people as property. You see, the authors of the Constitution were very interested in protecting their property, including slaves. No person held to service or labor in one state, under the laws thereof, escaping into another, shall, in consequence of any law or regulation therein, be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered up on claim of the party to whom such service or labor may be due. The Indian Removal Act of 1830. Indigenous communities are forced from their homelands. Over 10 years, 100,000 native children and adults marched thousands of miles west into unknown arid territory. 15,000 do not survive the journey. But over 25 million acres of land is made available for white settlers. 1854, the People versus Hall. Non-whites are barred from testifying in court. No black, mulatto, or Indian shall be allowed to give evidence in favor of or against a white man. 1857, Dred Scott versus Sanford. Free blacks are taxed, but still have no rights of citizenship granted to whites. 1862, Emancipation Proclamation in District of Columbia. Slaves are freed in D.C., but former slave owners are reimbursed for slaves given up. Whites are paid over $1 million in reparations for lost property. 1862, Homestead Act. 50 million acres of formerly indigenous land in the West, having been violently invaded by U.S. soldiers in violation of treaties, is distributed by the government at low cost to white settlers only. And 100 million acres of indigenous land are given for free to railroad developers. 1882, Chinese Exclusion Act bans immigration of both skilled and unskilled Chinese laborers. 1924, Johnson-Reed Act creates an immigration quota system based on national origin, favoring Nordics over the inferior races of Asia and Southern and Eastern Europe. 1934, in the wake of the Great Depression, the National Housing Act is implemented, creating a federal housing authority to provide loans and federal subsidies for home ownership. But the FHA mortgage underwriting standards discriminate against non-whites and investment in non-white communities through a process called redlining. 1942, an executive order forces 111,000 Japanese Americans into concentration camps. And the war on drugs declared by Richard Nixon violently targets and imprisons people of color disproportionately through today. There is another history of the United States, and this is where you come in. This is the history of people coming together and rising up to change laws and change the culture. 1791, Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution were adopted to protect we the people from the excesses of government. At the time, we the people protections only extended to white male property owners. 1865, 13th Amendment, slavery abolished. Civil Rights Act of 1866 extended the rights of emancipated African Americans. Congress passed this by overriding an attempted veto by President Andrew Johnson. 1868, the 14th Amendment, black males get equal protection under the law. 1870, 15th Amendment, black males get the right to vote. Social change in 1886 included a major campaign for the 8-hour workday. Knights of Labor were 1 million strong. Populists drew up the Cleburne demands. Eugene Debs builds the Brotherhood of Locomotive Firemen. In 1913, the 17th Amendment, the U.S. Senate will now be elected by the people instead of appointed by state governments. 1920, the 19th Amendment. After 75 years of struggle, women get the right to vote. 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education. Schools could no longer be segregated based on race. Separate is not equal. The Civil Rights Acts in the 1960s protected voting rights, prohibited discrimination by federal and state governments, and prohibited discrimination in housing sales and rentals. 1971, 26th Amendment. The voting age is changed from 21 to 18. If an 18-year-old could be drafted to fight and die in war, certainly they could vote. 1973, Roe versus Wade. Supreme Court rules that anti-abortion laws violate a woman's right to privacy. Abortion was legalized.
You can't be free if you don't have a home.
It's time for an intervention, y'all.
Money is not political speech.
Well, hello, everyone. Happy full moon. I'm Greg Coleridge, moved to Mend co-director. I live on land originally inhabited by the Erie, Chippewa, and other tribes known today is Northeast Ohio. I've been educating, advocating, and organizing here in Ohio and with Move to Amend for more than 40 years, first addressing the issues of money in elections and corporate power, corporate rule in 1995. The timelines you saw, all three of them pretty much ended in 2010 with the Citizens United decision. Much has happened since on all sides of the struggle for and against real justice and democracy. And so just to kind of give you a very brief update about what some of those decisions and developments have been and are, because some continue as we speak. Shortly after the Citizens United decision in 2010 was a decision, Speech Now versus FEC, in which the U.S. Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia invalidated federal contribution limits for independent expenditure groups. Shelby versus Holder was a law the Supreme Court, I should say, declared in 2013, so 3 years after Citizens United, that a section of the Voting Rights Act, a law that had previously been passed, was unconstitutional. And as a result of that decision, it resulted in renewed attempts in scores of states that were previously covered to enact almost immediately restrictive voting laws aimed at mostly minority voters that continues to this day. There's also decisions, McCutcheon versus FEC in 2014, the Supreme Court invalidated federal aggregate contribution limits. Before that time, individuals could only max out, a certain dollar amount per candidate, but they could only give the maximum amount to so many candidates until they reached a certain dollar amount. The Supreme Court in that decision bludgeoned that, overruled it, and said you can max out on any and every candidate running for federal office from coast to coast. Burwell versus Hobby Lobby, maybe you've heard of that. In 2014, the Supreme Court determined that closely held, corporations that are owned by a family are persons that could, never mind the persons having constitutional rights, but the company itself had corporate constitutional rights under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Americans for Prosperity versus Bonta. In 2021, the Supreme Court overturned a California law which mandated that tax-exempt groups must disclose data on their top donors to the state. So, the whole issue of transparency and disclosure was overturned. And then just recently, last year, there was a case, again, in California. The Supreme Court overturned a regulation that it was a longstanding state law that required agricultural employees to allow labor organizers to regularly access their property for purposes of union recruitment. That was a violation, the Supreme Court said, of that owner of the nursery of his Fifth Amendment as a company. So the property owner companies of Fifth Amendment was violated. And consequently, the regulation may not be enforced unless a just compensation was provided to employers. So that's the negative side, all the anti-democratic and unjust. The pro-democratic and pro-just developments we've seen since 2010, as you may be aware, in 2015, the Supreme Court held that the fundamental right to marry is guaranteed to same-sex couples under both the Due Process and Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. And equally exciting has been developments over the last dozen years, and it goes on, in which we have seen emerging, and in fact, emergence, social movements from the Me Too movement, women's movement, March for Our Lives for gun control, Black Lives Matters, the Rights of Nature is expanding here in this country and abroad, the Poor People's Campaign, which is going to have a major act that will culminate in a couple of years of organizing from coast to coast. That's taking place this weekend. And so all of those are emergent social movements, what I would categorize as emerging, maybe not quite there yet in terms of breaking out all over, but the seeds have been planted and are starting to bear fruit, are what we're involved in. a democracy movement, emerging democracy movement in which people who are working on single issues are realizing they're not getting as far as they would like fast enough because of the fact that we do not live in a real authentic democracy. And so that is what people increasingly are coming together with, and Move to Amend is part of that, doing our part. We like to believe disproportionately in helping others come together. And you're going to be hearing more later on some of the ways that's happening. So I just want to end by sharing with you briefly, as mentioned, I live in Ohio, and we here in Ohio, Move to Amenders and others have been involved in an effort to try to connect Move to Amend and the We the People Amendment to end corporate rule and get big money out of elections with current issues. And one of the big issues that has gone on here in the Buckeye State for the better part of a year is what has been understood across the political spectrum as the largest political scandal in the state's history. A corporation, First Energy, it's an Ohio utility that has had undue political influence, legalized bribery, political campaign contributions, donations, investments for a very long time. And they've worked tirelessly to prevent the transition to solar and energy power, and they've worked tirelessly to corrupt the political establishment through legalized bribery to make sure that their antiquated fossil fuel plants, coal and nuclear, get just bailed out and subsidized as much as possible. Well, the company was involved in this $60 million bribery scheme in which the company gave that amount of money to the Ohio House of Representative leader to fund legislators to support a bill to bail out these antiquated power plants. And some of the money was also used to literally intimidate citizens who gathered signatures on a referendum to overturn this bill, House Bill 6. The intimidation was successful and the referendum was kept off the ballot. The Ohio Majority Leader and others have been charged and disgraced. Several First Energy executives have been replaced. State and federal investigators are conducting investigations. And they all should face these First Energy executives and legislators and lobbyists jail time. But no one is talking about how to hold the company, First Energy Corporation, accountable. Despite the fact that the company has said that the company itself was guilty in engaging in illegal bribery, not legalized bribery, which they do all the time, but illegal bribery, this $60 million plus. Well, in Ohio and many states for a long time, since our inception here in Ohio and the inception of many states, corporations have been defined by licenses or charters. They can be given, they can be taken away or revoked. It's happened before in many instances in many states, and here in Ohio, maybe the most notable in the early 1890s. The state of Ohio sought to revoke what was then the biggest, baddest, most powerful corporation in the country, First, or I should say Standard Oil Company of Ohio. And it was done by the Ohio Attorney General at the time, a Republican, David K. Watson. So there is a legacy of that. And so we're trying to bring that back to life. That while on the one hand, we're following this track of ending corporate constitutional rights through education and advocacy and the like, we have this other track that we can do something about right here and now. Because still on the books, in the state constitution, is this provision that many believe is antiquated and old and the like, but still exists to revoke the charter. And so we have Move to Amend and other groups have reached out to our Attorney General, also a Republican, David Yost. The counsel for his office has responded favorably, and he said, quote, "I lead the team pursuing First Energy and other members of the criminal enterprise for our office." So they have deemed this company as a quote unquote criminal enterprise that we are using in every way, shape, and form in op-eds statewide, in Columbus, in Akron, the headquarters of First Energy. We're doing educational programs, and we're also trying to focus on the legal entity to pursue, to pressure First Energy to be held accountable by the Attorney General. And if that doesn't work, the state of Ohio Constitution also permits us to go to the state legislature, to go to any one of the 88 county prosecutors to get them to initiate charter revocation proceedings. So this is definitely, as I close, a legal maneuver and strategy, but at the same time, it's an educational effort, and at the very same time, it's a cultural effort. because ultimately to change socially, social change, as the movie Legalized Democracy says, it not only is changing the institutions, you have to change how people look at themselves and vis-a-vis other people and the creations that they create. So I'll just end with this quote, Tom Johnson, who was a former mayor of Cleveland, in talking about monopolies and utilities. Are they not, where they are privately owned, unlike many places that are publicly owned? Tom Johnson, many years ago, a century ago, said, "I believe in the municipal ownership of all public service monopolies, for if you do not own them, they will in time own you. They will rule your politics, corrupt your institutions, and finally destroy your liberties." And part of what we're trying to do here, as many of you are doing where you are, is to protect those liberties and to protect whatever amount of democracy we ever had, but that we are losing quickly. And the only way to do that is not through magical thinking or to think that it's going to happen automatically, but through engagement. And so that's what we're doing. And with your help today in this fund drive, you can help us do that. So thank you so much for your past support and your continued. With that, I want to introduce the next person who's going to come before you, Ryan Enger. She is the co-managing director of the Alliance for Just Money, a national organization working on monetary reform, or some call it democratizing the creation of money in our society. She's been very active of a coalition that Move to Amend has been a part of, made up of members representing several organizations, working to organize what she is going to talk about momentarily, a gathering that we're calling a radical gathering, cultivating the world we deserve, that Ryan is going to share with you right now. So thank you very much for being on this call. And Ryan, take it away.
Thank you for having me and inviting me to share. As Greg mentioned, I am a co-managing director at Alliance for Just Money. We are a national organization, also a member of the International Movement for Monetary Reform. So this is happening all around. And we are advocating for just money reform because many people believe that when a bank makes a loan, the money lent comes from savings already in the bank. We at Alliance for Just Money agree that's how it should be, but that's not how it is. Instead, private banks actually create new money as credit whenever they deem a party credit worthy, to pay them that principal plus interest over time. So in other words, when banks lend, what banks lend is not created by the federal government, as most of us believe, or even the Treasury, but instead by bank making that money through loans, otherwise known as debt money. So we believe that this money power and the benefits from money creation belong in the public sector, and there are three interdependent parts to just money reform that we advocate for. The first one, we require Congress to be the sole creator of all U.S. money, issued debt-free, and to establish a transparent and independent public monetary authority. We also advocate the end of the privilege of commercial banks to create and issue what we use as money, and to lastly transfer the ownership of the 12 Federal Reserve banks and all remaining operations of the Federal Reserve System to the U.S. Treasury. Just money will substantially increase the diversity of means to distribute newly created money, reducing extreme biases of the current system. And that is why we are excited to co-sponsor this awesome event, a radical gathering, cultivating the world we deserve, alongside Move to Amend and a radical guide. It has been an honor to organize with these other organizations, and a radical gathering is taking place on Zoom the weekend of June 24th through the 26th. So that would be next weekend. We have a lot lined up for the weekend. This gathering is a chance for us to learn and to teach each other about the work we are doing and how we can come together to uplift each other's movements. all the work that we are doing individually is so important and necessary, and we're hoping this space will bring us together to see that and help us imagine a world beyond where we're at right now with climate collapse and global capitalism and colonialism. We hope to get to the roots of our nation's problems and thinking outside the realm of what we've been taught. Again, each of our individual organizations are doing that in our own area of focus, and we're hoping to come together to bring our great minds in one space and hopefully work together beyond this gathering. So we have a guest speaker, Ajamu Baraka, and an incredible lineup across Saturday and Sunday with panels focused on land and water protection, reimagining worker power, economic solutions, frontline strategies for housing justice, corporate power resistance, organizing toward abolition, and more. So if none of that spiked your interest, then maybe this isn't for you, but I do feel like we're all here for similar reasons. And so I hope that you will consider joining us at a Radical Gathering. Come for any or all of it. Our schedule is jam-packed, and please check out radicalgathering.com to see what we have lined up and also register. And that's what I've got for you all. We are very excited for this, and yeah, I hope to see you there.
Ryan, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure working with you. Really, such a great perk of this work is finding really fabulous organizers that you would never, ever get the chance to work with. And so thank you so much. Again, it has been an absolute pleasure putting this event together. And if none of that sparked your interest, get out of here. No, really, thank you so much, Ryan, for coming. And you will get to hear more from them at the Radical Gathering. So come on out, sign up. I know we'll share that link in the chat. So I want to thank everyone who has spoken so far. We've had a couple donations coming in. I want to acknowledge that and continuing to encourage them to happen. We have our match fund through the 19th. That means every donation made up to $25,000 will be matched if we can make that goal. So please share this video. This is a great way to, not only introduce people to Move to Amend's work, but as well with some of our coalition partners. Speaking of which, Move to Amend works, our structure, let me give you a little taste, right? We have a national team that is spread out all across the country. You'll meet most of us tonight. We also have working groups, affiliate groups, and advocates that are the ones in communities doing the work of making the connections of corporate rule to the issues that folks, hold the most truest, dearest, closest to their heart. I want to introduce Eli. He is an advocate in New York. He's going to share a poem with us. Please give a little introduction to yourself, how you came to Move to Amend, and can't wait to hear.
Hi, my name is Eli. I joined Move to Amend because I was looking for movements that were focused on anti-corruption and on overturning Citizens United. And then in doing so, I joined a lot of different movements. I joined Represent Us. I joined American Promise. And I found that Move to Amend, for me, was the most responsive of all the different movements, and that I had the most respect from Mr. Coleridge, and that he spent hours of his time talking to me, and we developed plans on how we can unify different groups in the Move to Assembly. And so I feel very confident in Move to Amend. and I partook in a meeting about a month ago, which impacted me very profoundly when and so I wrote a letter. Sorry, not a letter, a poem, which I'll read to you right now. I don't know if you can still see me because I have the poem on my phone as well. But here goes. Floods of wealth and decadence overwhelm society, monopolized by the few, maintained by their propriety. Purchased lies become truths seeping into our mentality. Waste becomes a commonality, corruption a banality. When will we, who live and die for the profit of another, band together as sisters and brothers, unity together, tethered by the weather, suffering for nature's mother, severed from illusions, falling forever lost like a feather. Confusions over the solutions to the problems of pollution, persist in every aspect of, from the allocations to the execution of intended communications. Institutions stop resolution. And that's it. I don't know if you can still see me. I joined.
Thank you. Our connection
I think I
just
could,
broke up a little bit. Thank you.
Could you still
so
see me
much,
when I was reading the poem?
Eli.
Could you still see me? Could you still see me when I was reading the poem? All right. So yeah, I think I can show you my children right here. This is the reason why I joined Move to Amend, because I firmly understand that there's no purpose in working as hard as I do to provide for my family if I'm not also providing for their futures and ensuring that they inherit as good of a world as I inherited. And that's what I'll leave it at.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Eli, for all the work that you are doing in your community, as well as for sharing your poem tonight.
Okay.
So next up, we have another speaker from our national team, Jessica Munger, National Co-Director, has been our programs organizer for many years, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Millie. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica. I'm one of the co-directors of Move to Amend. I live on unceded Southern Paiute land called Las Vegas, Nevada. And excuse me, I've got a little bit of a frog in my throat. I've been fighting corporate power and advocating for the 28th Amendment since 2014. I really appreciate all of you being here and supporting Move to Amend in the many ways that you do. One of the reasons I think a lot of us are here is because we recognize that corporate power and money in politics is related to every single issue we struggle for in this country. June is Pride Month, and again, we are seeing the annual wave of rainbow marketing and the corporatization of this time of intergenerational queer joy and liberation for the sake of profit. This is a theme you've seen tonight, for the sake of profit, for the sake of profit. Maybe you've heard the term pinkwashing. If not, in this context, it is the deployment of superficially sympathetic messages for ends having little or nothing to do with LGBTQ+ liberation. So we're talking about rainbow marketing from companies that couldn't care less if we live or die. So nearly all of the biggest companies in America support Pride events, publicly declare their support for the community, and inevitably run commercials with monogamous, middle-class gay families representing the queer joy of saving on car insurance. But analysts at Data for Progress found that many of those same companies have donated to anti-LGBTQ+ efforts, directly harming our community, plus people of all ages in different ways. This year, anti-gay efforts have dramatically increased. We are moving backwards, and there are individuals, policies, and moneyed interests to blame. Companies like AT&T and State Farm, FedEx, Amazon, McDonald's, Walmart, Comcast, and so many more back state legislators who use their power to fight for Don't Say Gay bills, to vote against the Equality Act, against gender affirming healthcare for trans people, and have proposed legislation blatantly including the abuse of children in sports. This is violence. And meanwhile, these companies are tweeting sassy, rainbow-clad marketing ads designed to use the valid queer longing for representation against us in order to profit, and then turn around and use that money to support people who harm us. It's classic. It's a trick in the book that's been very effective for them. But here's the thing about money in politics, though. It's an investment for them. And in some ways, a bet they can't really lose. A lot of these companies like AT&T also support state legislation advocating for gay rights. So we have to remember that a corporation is not a person, and it doesn't have a sense of ethics or a gut instinct or a gay cousin. It has a lot of money, and its one direction is to increase profits and perhaps provide a product or service that people like. Corporations give to Democratic candidates too, many of them sort of 50-50 between the two ruling parties, because they know that no matter what, their money is going to work for them. So it doesn't matter if Disney loves us or hates us, they're going to play the role that they need to play to maximize profit, even if it means violence to our community. So this is why we will only have lasting change if we reconfigure the system which necessitates this behavior in the first place. It's not about one corporation or one campaign or even one state legislator or policy. So when people are trying desperately to monetize resistance, like they are this month, let's remember that we are more than just consumers like they'd like us to believe. So our resistance can go so much deeper than just not buying something, right? Resistance, I think, is dismantling the system that makes this hypocrisy possible and necessary in the first place. So the We the People Amendment, and also all of your everyday local efforts to curb corporate rule, fight corporate constitutional rights and money in politics, that's resistance. The stuff that people are talking about tonight that you're doing in your communities, that's resistance. We desperately need people like you supporting and maintaining the push to challenge corporate power at its roots. And this is very important work. And this is an example of how this work manifests in a really life or death way. So thank you so much for supporting it. But let me tell you, this work cannot happen without everyone pitching in. We do this on a tight budget, and being able to know what we're working with helps us to be much more strategic and effective. We're really the only ones doing this work, and it's entirely funded by us, by all of us. So thank you so much for your support. I really, really appreciate you. Next is going to be my friend Daniel Lee. I'm excited to introduce him. Daniel is a Move to Amend board member, organizer, veteran, mayor of Culver City, candidate for California's 37th congressional district, and many other things. He's like the busiest person I know. So thank you so much, Daniel, for being here tonight. And thanks all of you for everything that you do.
Yeah, definitely very happy to be here. As of today, though, I am former candidate for California's 37th district. And it's a very interesting story of how that actually came to be. The 37th district is one of California's quote unquote Black districts. Even though it's primarily Latino, it's one of two districts in Los Angeles County where it's historically Black. And that's why there are a number of candidates running who are Black. There are two Black women who came in ahead of me. Both are more well-known politicians who can raise a lot more money. One says a lot of the things that I say around criminal justice reform and Medicare for all, while taking in money from basically law enforcement groups and insurance companies and hospital companies. Another is a woman who tried to rebrand herself because when she was on the LA City Council, she was very anti-homeless and anti anything but really luxury housing, things that benefit the ultra rich and developers. It's very interesting how this race turned out. Initially, it was just me and the state senator. I know both of the people I'm running against. I've known them for quite some time. Then a third person jumped into the race that made it interesting. The weird thing is the person who came in first raised something around $500,000, but most of the ads that were actually run in her favor, whether those be mail or TV, were paid for by other people. They were paid for by super PACs. And this election cycle, our future PAC, which is run by a Bitcoin billionaire, as well as AIPAC and Democratic Majority for Israel, are targeting progressive anti-corporate candidates in the primaries instead of waiting until the general. And there's a lot about the message of this campaign that I ran and a campaign that I ran last year that resonates with people. The way you can tell is that many of my opponents basically lifted my language from my mouth and or from my website and ran with it and used their money to pump it up more. What's really interesting in this race is overall in the primary, we've raised just under $60,000. The person who came in ahead of me raised at least $200,000 more. And the person who came in first raised about $450,000 more than that if you add all the outside help. The very weird thing is that there were 7 candidates total in this race. And I was the only candidate who had attack ads run against him. There were some on television, and then there were some mailed to people, over $120,000 of ads, in fact. And I think this sort of underlines what's really at stake in our democracy, or quote unquote democracy. The people who have the money are really trying to limit the choices that people have before they have a choice. As anybody who knows, who pays attention to electoral politics, people don't often vote in primaries. People don't often vote in off-cycle elections. So if the people in power and or the corporations who own our government really want to play very early, i.e. the primaries, which AIPAC, Democratic Majority for Israel, and some other conservative super PACs have, they can determine the elections before anyone even has the chance to vote. For me, their attack ads were incredibly vague. They were like, don't trust Daniel Lee. He takes money from people who are professional. It was mildly humorous. And I think it might have possibly backfired a little and gave us a little bit more name recognition than we had. But the truth of the matter is negative advertising works. And negative advertising funded by corporations is a way that, it keeps our quote unquote democracy or republic in stasis. That's why the We the People Amendment is so important. It's the first step that we need to take to actually get to a type of electoral system that is public, that is publicly financed, that is free from the influence of both corporations and rich moneyed people. Because it's not just corporations, it's families like the Sackler family who can engineer basically no real consequences falling on them, even though they are one of the main causes of the opioid crisis and one of the largest producers of fentanyl in the country. It's something that, we really need to address, but which we can't address, whether we're talking about drug addiction and drug deaths, the climate crisis, the sorely needed changes we still need to make around public safety. There is a corporation and or a well-moneyed billionaire who doesn't want to see that change and who will spend as much money as they can to make sure things either go back in time, which I'm not a fan of, or stay the same place where they are. That's why the We the People Amendment is so important. And that's why I'm personally very passionate about the We the People Amendment, but more and more I'm very interested about seeing what more we can do. And I am very passionate about some of the work that Move to Amend is doing in other ways. We'll probably talk more about that later this year. But the We the People Amendment is essential. When we started, it was, a constellation of folks working for constitutional reform. Right now, we're really the only game in town, and we're the only people focusing on grassroots organizing and focusing on letting everyday people know how these large corporations and these moneyed interests really influence their day-to-day lives and influence their ability to choose. And I think that's something that can't be underlined enough. If your choices are pre-made, if the options are pre-made, do you really have choice? And in our current democracy, we do not. We do not have a choice. We basically have to give our blood, sweat, and tears, and then someone can write a check that's less than 5% of their worth, and sort of really sandbag us and push us back. That's what we're seeing in a lot of progressive races across the country. That's why it's very apparent that even though we need to remain active, especially locally and on the county level, to push for the changes that we need, ultimately we need systemic change. And the We the People Amendment is the way to do that.
Thank you so much, Daniel.
Of course.
We are unique in that our national team is built of folks really involved in their own work, in their communities, with other organizations nationally. It is incredibly important to be able to connect the dots between corporate rule, why the We the People Amendment is a necessity, to the work that people are most affecting their lives and they care the most about. I want to take another moment to really underline we have a unique opportunity right now. As you've heard, Move to Amend is a very much grassroots organization. Our average donation is just between $30 and $40. We have an opportunity right now. A handful of our donors and biggest supporters, many of them actually active affiliate members and leaders across the country, have put together a $25,000 match fund. If we can make that $25,000 by June 19th, it will be doubled. So please share this with all of your friends and networks. Make a contribution if you can. We wanted to give you a taste of the work that we do. Also, the work that is most important to us, which is why we do this as our secondary issue. I want to give a couple shout outs. We've had a couple donations. One from Lisa in California. Thank you, Lisa. We also have a donation from Richard in Michigan. So thank you both for that. Your donations, as you know, will be doubled. I also want to plug, we will be doing a prize drawing at the end of our event. So if you make a donation of $100 or more, or sign up to be a monthly sustainer at $28 or more, you will be entered into a prize drawing for a Move to Amend t-shirt. I now want to turn it over to Jenny Spanos, who heads up our Florida State Network, has been integral in piecing together our Georgia State Network, also serves as a co-director here on our national team. So thank you so much, Jenny. Welcome.
Hi, sorry, Jenny. I think you're muted.
All of that. Sorry about that. I did thank Millie and thank you to Alfonso. I did not realize. I'm currently located in Pensacola, Florida. As Millie said, I am a national co-director, but I'm also overseeing some of the Southeast region for our campaign to for the We the People Amendment co-sponsor programs. Like I said, I am in Pensacola, which is formerly Appalachia, Colusa, Creek, Muskogee, Seminole land. I just came off of a meeting today with the representative, a Councillor Flood from Representative Terry Sewell's office, and very exciting. He is going to, he is in support of the We the People Amendment, and he is going to present it to Congresswoman Sewell very soon, and hopefully they'll come on as a co-sponsor. But I'm kind of coming off of that real buzz of a really great meeting, and I did want to talk to y'all about some of our newer co-sponsors. From Georgia, we have Nikema Williams. Now, this is a great example of what persistence does. We met with Congresswoman Williams' office initially in July of last year in 2021. Then we met with her again in December 3rd of 2021. And we were trying to get another meeting to find out, because they seemed very supportive, why they hadn't come on yet. And one of our lead representatives in the state, she signed on to support Move to Amend 4 months ago after she was referred to and recruited by a friend of hers. And since then, she was just tenacious in getting her representative on board. And so we're really excited to welcome them. And now she's ready to work on some of the other states. That's one of the programs we're doing. Our campaign goal this year is to secure 125 co-sponsors for the We the People Amendment, excuse me, which is currently House Joint Resolution 48 before the end of 2022. And we're on target to do that. We, of course, one of the programs that we use to help with that is what we call our pledge campaign. And what this is when you are able to reach your members that are running for office. A lot of times once they get into office, they're really busy and you get someone else. But while they're running, they want to hear from their voters. So this is a great way to target candidates for state, local, and federal offices to get their positions on the record for the We the People Amendment and making it an election issue. So that's gearing up right now, since most have qualified or not qualified for their offices. And again, that pledge statement is pretty simple. They support amending the U.S. Constitution to make it clear that corporations and other artificial entities do not have corporate constitutional rights, and that money is not free speech. Campaign spending should be limited through regulation in our elections. As Millie had mentioned earlier, we have advocates all over the world working in this sphere. And so I would like to introduce next Ryan Miller. He's an advocate from Texas, and he's going to talk a little bit about why he moves to Amend.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for the intro, Jenny. My name is Ryan. My pronouns are he, him. I'm one of two advocates here in Austin, Texas. I have to give a shout out to my teammate, Colin Clark. He was the original, and over the last couple of years, he and we have cultivated a group that now includes about 5 active members. Why I moved to Amend? There are a lot of things that concern me. Examples include the way that our culture interacts with the environment, how we mine, how we farm, how we fish, even how our overall consumption patterns are poisoning our planet. I also think it's bananas that in the wealthiest society that's ever existed, many, if not most people, don't get the physical and mental health care that they need. And it's also incredible the way consumer data can be gathered and sold without clear information and consent in ways that allow corporations to influence our thinking, our behavior, and really our lives. I could continue listing things well beyond my allotted time, and surely with plenty of contributions from everyone watching as well. And none of it makes sense unless viewed through the lens of profitability. As a people, we are getting sicker, unhappier, and paying more for all of it because the balance of power is tipped. corporations, I don't think, are evil. They're highly effective tools for generating wealth. And like the rest of us, they are self-interested. It is in their favor to do everything they can to influence society to their benefit. And they've been very successful at doing so. The rules as currently written obviously allow corporations, their executives, and their largest shareholders to bias laws in their favor. And I move to amend to restore checks and balances on corporate power and to ensure that ours is a government of we the people and not an illusion thereof. Working with the team here in Central Texas, probably our greatest accomplishment to date has been building a team here in Central Texas. However, over the last year or so, we've also tabled at several community events, collecting a couple hundred signatures. We hosted a screening and a discussion of the documentary from Move to Amend, Legalize Democracy. We won co-sponsorships from a quarter of the Texas Democratic Caucus, and actually just recently learned that the city of Austin passed language opposing Citizens United and corporate personhood back in 2014. Items that we're working on currently include winning an official endorsement from the Travis County Democratic Party here in Austin, getting language included in the Texas Democratic Party platform, supporting an amendment clarifying that corporations don't have inalienable rights of people and that raising and spending of money can be regulated, and ultimately trying to win co-sponsorships from the remaining 10 members of the Texas Democratic Caucus. And while we're a volunteer force here in Central Texas, we absolutely could not have accomplished what we have without the support of our national team. Donations to Move to Amend allow our national staff to focus on this work full time and while also preserving our political and economic independence, as you've heard several times tonight. I'm actually a monthly donor myself, and if you're watching and haven't yet had the time to volunteer, I'd ask you to please consider signing up for monthly donations. It's the best way to create the time and space for others to focus on our mission, and as you're able, would also love your time and your labor as well. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Excuse me, folks, while we figure out these tech things. Thank you so much, Ryan. Brilliant to see things happening, especially in states like Texas. I will now be turning it over to Shelly Williams, another national team member, fantastic human who has been helping to create some local power in the Sacramento community, and we can't wait to hear from her on that. Also, one more plug. We just got another donation from Fred in Oklahoma. Thank you so much, Fred. See, we have supporters everywhere. Can you believe it? Anyway, over to you, Shelly.
Hey, everyone. I'm Shelly Williams, and I'm on the Move to Amend national team. I've been doing this work for a little over 7 years now. And this is kind of the first time I'm actually talking about the local work that I do. I was asked to do that today, which is really exciting. So, you know, this is a national campaign, but a lot of these corporate rule and money and politics issues are happening on the state and local level too. And where I live in unceded Nisenan and Miwok land, so-called Sacramento, like all of California, is basically the ground zero for the housing crisis that is both well underway, but also has only just begun. You know, we're seeing the brunt of it here, and it's coming to you if it hasn't yet. And so a lot of the work that I do, it started out, you know, doing just mutual aid and service to encampments. And once building those relationships, started to get involved with sweep defense, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And then, you know, now I'm getting kind of into more like political advocacy, legislative stuff because of the things that I've seen and learned in doing this work over the past few years. I did come from a social work housing background, but I left it because I didn't enjoy being part of the system. So working outside of it is a way more comfortable place for me. So the housing crisis is very multifaceted, but it's absolutely a corporate rule and money and politics issue. It's ultimately an expression of our country's ethos, which is very clear in our Constitution as well, which is that property has more value than human life and the nature and environment we need to survive. Had lots of divestment from public housing over the years, economic downturn from the pandemic that caused a lot of unemployment and mass evictions. We know housing stock is now just being completely sold off to multinational corporations like BlackRock so that it can be rented back to us at a higher rate. And that's why, it's driving up costs for everyone. Obviously, Airbnb isn't helping. And then when grassroots movements, like we've had here for measures like rent control or just cause eviction, which is where you can't just evict somebody because you want to flip a house, you have to have a real reason, or participatory budgeting, which I think Keon will talk about a little bit later, which would allow communities to collectively decide where money is spent. All these initiatives get crushed by corporate funded opposition campaigns that are, they're just they have much deeper pockets than we do. So we see it on every level. And then what we see these same entities doing and putting money into, what they're advocating for their legislation are basically just big sweep bills to just make it illegal to live outside because of, their property values and etc. So a sweep, if you're not familiar with what happens in a sweep, they're pretty popular in California, New York, Washington, but they happen everywhere. It's just armed police come in and forcibly remove people from where they've been living. They throw away their tents, their belongings. People lose, their important paperwork, their sentimental items. It's just, there's nothing offered to them. It's just re-traumatizing. And that's what people who are unhoused go through regularly all the time. Just move here, move there, go back to where you were. And so much money goes into this, but it really comes down to corporate rule saying, well, we don't want to see it. We don't want to see the problem, but we don't want to do anything about it. And so the middle ground there is just keep spending money, moving people around and harming them as homelessness only grows. So these entities here in California are coordinating. So this is like the Apartment Association, Chamber of Commerce, real estate interests. Here in California, they do it under the guise of of conservation. So that's the new thing that they're doing. That feels very dark, but that is their thing. So they're doing bills on the state level to make it illegal to live outside, force people into, psychiatric treatment and conservatorships, and 2 ballot measures on our local level as well. So that's 4 bills, same people behind all of them. And, it's a corporate conspiracy that's being sold to us as, environmental protection. So we're getting into kind of eco-fascist time. And that's why this issue feels really important. So while this is very clearly a corporate rule and money and politics issue that connects very clearly to Move to Amend and the We the People Amendment, I also want to talk a little bit about the culture of Move to Amend and why I love working here, which is that, our work outside of this national campaign, we value local work deeply and genuinely and authentically, and we're all doing that on some level. This is a culture where I can go if I need to go for a couple of hours and miss a little bit of work to go, help an encampment that's getting swept and do some documentation or helping connect people with resources. The culture of our organization is extremely supportive of that as long as I'm, fulfilling the rest of my obligations. And I have never worked anywhere like that before. This movement is real. The people working at Move to Amend are very real people. I care about, tenant rights and homelessness, because I have been directly impacted by it. And we are all just normal working class people who deeply care and see this as, a real solution that intersects with everything, because some people came in to Move to Amend from environmental work, housing, healthcare. There's just so many ways in, because it's corporate rule at the root of all of it. So this is one of those issues that can bring everything together. And that's why I believe in it. So singing for my supper. I'm a single mom. A lot of us are, really just doing this work because we deeply care, and we are 100% grassroots funded, which means we can't count on big money coming down the line. So we're always flying by the seat of our pants, and we're getting it done. You can see the progress we've made in this Congress. You can see the progress we've made with our endorsements, our petitions, all of the ballot initiatives and resolutions that have been passed all over the country. We've been building this thing up from the ground up for a decade, and it shows, and couldn't be more proud to work here. If you're new and this is the first time you're hearing about it, this is, you can trust that your money is going directly to what it should. And just thank you for being here and for supporting this movement, and for letting me talk a little bit about my local work, because I don't usually do that here. Thanks.
Shelly, thank you so much. Take all my money, please. No, but really, keep it coming in, y'all. As Shelly said, what is incredibly important about Move to Amend is that we are recognizing that we can't continuously fight fire after fire, right? At some point, we have to realize that we have to look bigger and move towards systemic change. And so everything we've talked about tonight, it really comes down to a major roadblock of corporate rule. And the We the People Amendment is the only proposal on the table that addresses both money in politics and the bigger issue at hand, which is corporate constitutional rights. And again, we are a grassroots coalition, right? We are made up of individuals, of organizations, of working groups in communities across the country. And we need your help, not just financially. Yes, that's a huge piece, but we need your help spreading the word. So please take a second, if you haven't already, to share this film. We're not quite film. What year is this? Share this live stream. We're not quite finished. We really want to get people who have not ever heard of Move to Amend in. And I think that this is a great opportunity to hear about all the ways that this is important. Again, through the 19th, we have the opportunity for all donations made to be doubled. Please take advantage of this. We have dropped the link everywhere. I'm now going to turn it over to Keon Bliss, board member, has played many roles within Move to Amend, and has now is in Sacramento, California, and is going to talk about some of the organizing work he does there and how that, fundamentally comes back to addressing corporate rule in a systemic way. So here you are. Thanks so much, Keon.
Sorry, Keon, you're muted.
Thanks for the tech help. Appreciate it, y'all. Thank you so much, Millie, and thank you to everyone on the team at Move to Amend for creating this awesome space, and really continue to be honored and humbled to be a part of this for going on 9 years next month. And for me, as a longtime community organizer, democracy advocate, and abolitionist, I've been with Move to Amend since I started as an intern back in the summer of 2013, and continued on to this day because I believe that, honestly, when it comes down to it, we as a country haven't yet practiced what it means to be like a genuine participatory democracy, or at least one that prioritizes like life and the planet and our collective well-being compared with property and property rights. Because as many of you who have been following along with Move to Amend have long since known, we continue to live in a society that has, in a nation that was founded on the principle of property rights and profit first, and adding human rights as an afterthought. And despite the fact that we've amended the Constitution 27 times, the first 10 times with the Bill of Rights, because we have failed to define who is a person worthy of protection, we have allowed artificial entities, corporations, to insert themselves through well-paid lawyers and unelectable Supreme Court justices who have made a series of decisions to extend constitutional protections to for-profit corporations and other artificial entities incorporated by state law under the First, Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendments. And as long as corporations are considered persons with inalienable human rights, and their money is considered a form of protected political speech, they will be able to assert their rights, their interests better than any real living human being or our communities through the sheer concentration of wealth. And the reason and that's why at Move to Amend, we really have to fight to get the excessive special interest money out and the undue political influence by corporations out of the political process. And the solution really has to be comprehensive enough to leave for no loopholes. And what really impressed me the most about Move to Amend is that ending corporate rule is not just a political issue for us. This is a human rights issue that intersects with every struggle for justice that's happening today. Because as I'm also involved here in Sacramento, I'm also engaged in a number of different fronts within the racial justice movement, particularly around the areas of police accountability and on decarceration work, abolishing the prison industrial complex, as well as other means of incarceration and just enslavement, the traditional evolution that came from the original chattel slavery that our country built its wealth upon. And a lot of the work that we do, all of these dots are connected by the fact that they're no matter what issue we're working on, whether that's creating police-free crisis response alternatives, or trying to close down our jail systems to prioritize our local resources on community care needs and mental health and trauma services. We are continuously running against a wall of large-scale corporate industries or major corporations, both locally owned and small, that are holding back any real meaningful process that would dare to upend the status quo. And as long as corporate rule can exist without sexism, or cannot exist without racism, sexism, or classism, because it depends upon throwaway classes of people who must suffer in order to maintain the comforts and privileges of the powerful, we cannot create a real, genuine democracy, because the vast majority of us continue to be inherently harmed and targeted by this system of oppression created under corporate rule, particularly women who are now at risk of losing, or women and people who give birth who are at risk of losing their inalienable rights to make their own choices about their bodies. Black and Indigenous people of color who are continuously subjected and targeted by our legal and law enforcement institutions that are driven by money and profit, and also immigrants and other people and poor people of all colors. We literally cannot have a democracy movement, let alone a real democracy, without centralizing the social, economic, and political realities of these marginalized communities. But more importantly than joining in Move to Amend to really address the core root problems that intersect with so many of these struggles for justice, we really have to think beyond what comes after the We the People Amendment. And We the People, because as we have mentioned before throughout our history, the We the People Amendment is really just the first step towards having a deep conversation in this country of what does participatory democracy that prioritizes people and the planet first actually look like. and how do we as a collective people come together to make decisions about our resources and our way of lives. So one of the things I'm also involved in here locally and nationally is in participatory budgeting, which for those that aren't familiar with participatory budgeting, it basically is a democratized process that has been implemented in this is part of an international movement of over 7,000 cities and hundreds of cities here in the United States that have created an inclusive way of democratizing budget decisions so that we everyday community members can directly decide how to spend parts or all of a public budget. And in short, it basically, PB involves making real decisions about real money, rather than just having the current consultations that we often see at the local, state, and even federal level, much less at the federal level. And one of the things that really excites me about this potentially game-changing democracy tool is that it's not just a one-day event that we usually have at every year in November. It's an annual cycle of public meetings, community engagement events, and voting, where each process can be adapted, and each process being able to be adapted to the specific communities and needs that it serves. And the short of it really is that if you can spend it, you can do PB with it. And the great thing I love about it too is that it's designed specifically to reverse power imbalances, not reinforce them. As it is right now, as has been mentioned by many of my colleagues, including Dr. Lee on the board, on our board as well, money is running this system right now. And a lot of that is concentrated in so few of hands because our current processes for governing how we spend our resources is delegated to a handful of elected officials who are at the beck and call of a lot of these corporate oligarchs and their wealthy funders. So PB, for participatory budgeting, it really creates an inclusive and equitable process where community members actually can engage and have meaningful direct say in how their money is spent in in an impactful way. And there are so many examples and case studies that come from what PB looks like. And just to give you a couple of those examples, places like Boston, where the mayor on a youth-led PB process, created a youth-led PB process that was so successful that the mayor at the time institutionalized this participatory democratic process to create an office of participatory budgeting to plan and implement the process for the entire city. And even here in Sacramento, where I'm currently based out of here, working locally, we're currently working on our own pilot process that's working to implement a very small fund that's going to fund a lot of seed projects to support and uplift predominantly Black and Indigenous communities of color who have long since been underinvested and oftentimes get the bare minimum of our resources. I bring all these things, these examples up, and there are so many more that I could be talking into, is that, if we are to have a deep conversation of and implement these sorts of processes and prevent them from being co-opted and used to reinforce our system of corporate rule, it really is key for us to really make clear in our official law of the land that we the people are free and sovereign, and that constitutional rights belong to human beings only, not corporations, and that money is not elected or is not protected political speech. So we can actually regulate it in a political process to ensure that all people have equal access to the political process. And that's why I give to Move to Amend. I give $28 every month, plus additional more in the beginning and ends of every year. To make sure that we can continue this movement and really continue to grow this multi-ethnic, intergenerational, cross-class movement that is going to be necessary to amend the U.S. Constitution, as we have done 27 times before, and we will continue to do again as long as this nation continues to exist. So with that said, I really hope that you all will give as much money as you can. Any amount really helps. I want to thank everybody on staff at Move to Amend and want to pass it back off to my colleagues.
Hey, thank you so much, Keon. There we go. Thank you, Keon, so much. Really appreciate you. I also want to continue to highlight this match opportunity that we do have right now. Move to Amend, again, is grassroots. We rely on everyone giving everything they can. And of course, contributions come in all of their forms. We've gotten several more donations that have come in. Ryan in Austin, who spoke earlier, our advocate there, has given. 2 more mothers have given. 2 mothers of national team members. We love this internal support here. Please continue to share this film and make a donation if you can. At the end of the event, we will do a prize drawing. I'm going to turn it over to George Friday. We have a clip of them now. This is George is a founder of Move to Amend, also a current board member. And again, the theme of tonight was really looking at the work that people have dedicated their lives to and trying to understand why passing the We the People Amendment is an integral step to reaching and achieving those things that we've been working towards. So George Friday couldn't join us live because they are traveling on the way to the Poor People's Campaign event, which she'll tell us more about right now. So kicking it over to you, George.
It's good to be talking to you, especially about Move to Amend, because it's so vital that we are pooling our collective energy to change the fundamental way the U.S. operates. We see that all over. When I took my first job out of college, I worked for Peace Action, which was SANE back then, and then became SANE Freeze. And the reason I chose to work for them as my first job was because, fresh from college, and maybe a little naive, I believed that peace was everything. That peace was no racism, no classism, no sexism, no poverty, no environmental destruction. In 1982, when I graduated from college, I wanted to work for peace, because peace meant we had everything we needed. Now, it's 40 years later, 2022, and I'm not trying to think I'm super prophetic or anything, but other folks have caught on that peace is everything, because the Poor People's Campaign brings together our energy and building power to disrupt and end poverty, systemic racism, environmental devastation, war and militarism, and the false moral narrative of Christian nationalism. Now, to make any effort on that, we need to change the fundamental way the U.S. works. That is Move to Amend. Back in the day when we started Move to Amend, and I'm happy to be among the, I don't think there were 12 of us, but it would be nice if it was that number, because we could, have that significant number of 12. One of the things that was, to me, most promising at that time is the opportunity to have a democracy that included everyone. Because all of us weren't there included in the beginning, or intended to be, or ever intended. There was never any intention, this is George Friday's opinion, for all people to be included in any kind of power in this country. So that's why we have to change the rules. That's why we need to have Move to Amend as part of our organizing work, our demands for justice, because we can't have justice when corporations are people. And people don't have the rights that a corporation would. in terms of protecting our land and our water, our jobs, our schools, our communities. We need to be able to act with sovereignty and not be intimidated by corporations. Now, this isn't really easy work because we're talking about transformation. It's not quick, lots of stumbles, lots of barriers and obstacles in the way, but we're talking about bottom-up building power from relationships with people who are suffering from the most heinous conditions of corporate rule, people who find themselves threatened without safe places to live, clean water in their communities, clean air to breathe, safety in their schools, their places of worship, their jobs. Those of us who can have the right and the responsibility to take on this work and create conditions for those who suffer most to have some measure of ease, of space, of release. And in doing so, we come closer to getting the kind of democracy we deserve. That, for me, is the importance of Move to Amend in 2022, and makes me not regret my decisions I made in 1982 when it comes to peace, and when we founded Move to Amend as well. Do all you can to support the Poor People's Campaign effort on Saturday. If you can't be in DC, watch on your device because it'll help with the numbers. The numbers matter. Part of changing things and challenging power is letting them know you have the numbers to threaten the status quo. And yes, I use the word threaten, I meant it. But Saturday the 18th is not the end. It is the ignition. It is setting it off, because we got plenty of work to do to transform the way the country works, to make sure we have real democracy. We have to pass the We the People Amendment. We have to work in our communities to get people who we trust in positions of power in elections, from the school board and the city council and the county commissioners to the state representatives. And then we have to make sure by demanding that they do what we know they have to do to make sure we the people are ruling this country and not the corporations. All right, then, stay on it.
Hey, thank you so much, George. I know we also have some people out there at the Poor People's Campaign with petitions, Move to Amend petitions. And that is, yet again, one more way for you to help participate within this movement. You know, everyday conversations is where we grow the most. Getting your friends and family to sign the petition, engaging in conversations, letting them know about us and the work that we do. We have one more speaker lined up for you. Tara Ingram, board member, had been a wonderful part of the affiliate there in Sacramento, where she is. So thank you so much for being here, Tara. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Millie. Hi, everybody. It's been really neat to be present and see this team speak about the importance of this issue and all the multidimensional factors. And what strikes me the most about it is how helpful it is, like, to hear things put in clear terms, right? Things can seem so chaotic and confusing, and like, how do we sort all of these pieces out? Like Millie was talking about the fires, right? And hearing these kind of root causes helps me organize my my mind and my heart around this is what's going on, and here's the steps that we can take. And no, it's not easy. It's vast, but it at least makes sense on some level. And so, in thinking about joining today, I was thinking about sort of my work and how this shows up the most for me in my work. I'm a psychotherapist, and so I see a lot with people and how distressed they are around trying to understand things and understand what's going on and why they feel so insecure about the institutions that people have, many people have thought that they could rely on for a long time and are realizing that they can't. But even more precisely, how I see corporate rules show up is in terms of insurance and healthcare coverage, which is, a mess, basically. If healthcare, if we think of healthcare as a net, we would want it to be a net that, it supports as many people as possible, right? And really, we have a net that most people are not supported by. And those who are lucky enough, for whatever reason, to have access to it, oftentimes it's prohibitive premiums or deductibles that make people forego healthcare needs, and then things turn into bigger problems, or they are, severely impacted by not getting the treatment that they need, and even can die from things that they're not getting treatment for, or medication changes that can be made. A person is, has debilitating migraines from a head injury at work, and there's a medication that they've been given that makes that pain tolerable enough that they can function, and then suddenly they go to pick up the prescription and they find out that the insurance company has said that they can't have it anymore, and there was no notice, and that's actually a real experience that I witnessed, and those things are devastating to people's lives, and people are having a very, very hard time getting referrals for treatment, for medical procedures, and in terms of mental health, it's, as a therapist, I'm on several panels, but it's ridiculous. The bureaucracy to get set up with each individual one, it's a lengthy, complicated process. I'm lucky enough that my brain can sort out that bureaucracy fairly well, and I have a hard time with it. So it's a lot of therapists don't do it anymore, because not only is it very demanding energetically to manage, because of all the regulations and particularities and how it's all the different insurance companies are different. And then also on top of that, the rates that they will pay are quite low in some cases, in a lot of cases. And so this leaves therapists in a really difficult position. And some of them, and also it leaves therapists in a difficult position because trying to help people that need help, right? And yet also trying to survive. But even more than the difficulty with the therapist is with people who are needing support. And that's increasing dramatically in these last years. And private pay is just absolutely prohibitive for most people. And then, people who are on some of the most vulnerable people, like Medi-Cal, it is exceedingly difficult for people to find a therapist who will take Medi-Cal insurance. And so in terms of addressing this, so yeah, individual reforms and regulations, those can be helpful. But ultimately, those are like the fires that Millie mentioned. Like, they're not going to get us at the root problem. And oftentimes, the companies, the industries will find ways to work around them anyway, or challenge those laws outright, which they can do with corporate constitutional rights. Like, we know this is how they, and they actually write laws. They will draft laws to applying to their own industry. So really addressing the issue at the root is getting health care industry and other industries, all other industries, out of our legal and financial and judicial systems entirely. They are not meant to be in there making these decisions, because they're doing it for their benefit, not for the people's needs. So those are the pieces that I see the most directly every day. And it's I think if I didn't understand what was creating all this mess and have thoughts about how to move forward and participate in this wonderful, grassroots movement for ending corporate constitutional rights, for getting the We the People Amendment pushed through, and then beyond that, it would be really hard. This helps me feel like I'm doing something that matters. And I know that it matters not just for these industries that I'm the most connected to, but everything else that I care about, right? That so many of the others have mentioned. So I am honored to be a part of this, and great to see you all, and please join us.
Thank you so much, Tara. We are going to bring everybody back in from the national team that's left here. And again, we have the amazing opportunity in front of us for all donations up to $25,000 to be matched. We don't spend much of our time fundraising. We typically, at the end of the year and in spring, we do one big fundraising drive, get it out of the way, and then continue back to the real work. As you can see, we are heavily invested in changing culture, in shifting the way we function in our communities, can survive, overcoming huge obstacles, envisioning a future that we want. So please support us in every way that you can. Sharing this video is a great way to give people a taste. We also will refer you to all of the organizations, the groups, the work being done that was mentioned tonight, if you want to find out more about that. I have a few more thank yous to go through. I also want to give a moment to thank everybody who donated before our live stream began earlier today. So really quickly, John Fioretta in California, thank you so much. Not only a donor, but a Move to Amend advocate, as true as can be. Also, we have Ellen in New Hampshire, Jack in Indianapolis, John in Indiana, Michael Adcock, affiliate leader here near me in Prescott, Arizona, Mark Harding in Georgia. So as you can see, all of these happen to be all over the place. I couldn't have planned that more better if I had tried. But I do want to turn it over to some of my colleagues to continue to entice you to donate. Let me give you a little rundown of where we are at. We just hit over $3,000 in our drive. We have through the 19th to make 25. So let's see how high we can get with you here tonight.
Millie, I was laughing because during this program, I have received 11 text messages from candidates because tonight is the night. I'm here in Nevada, and that means a lot of campaign ads. And while we're here talking about the influence of money in politics, here it is. It's the desperate last call. And it has me thinking about how easy it feels and good it feels to give money to candidates sometimes, because it's such a concrete thing, right? Here's my money for this one person, and this campaign is going to change everything. And politics are important, and electoral politics are important, especially locally, right? But I'm gonna make a frank ask, and that is that as we continue to move through and into election season, and you are getting email after text message of candidates asking you for money, when we all know they're getting a lot of money from corporate interests and from lobbies and PACs. You know, your $27 to a senator who's trying to get reelected, you know, okay, your $27 to move to amend goes a lot further. And movements are not built of elections, right? They're not built out of getting rallied behind one person. Movements and change are sustained progress over time. And so I'm just gonna say that as I was reminded of the overwhelming amount of campaign ads coming our way soon, it's gonna be a long few years, and let's consider like the impact of our money in terms of making political change, because funding movements is certainly more sustainable and more effective than funding candidates. So I'll leave my part there, and thank you so much.
I can add to that. I got another hot tip. When you're getting those text messages, a thing you can do, especially if they're not, I mean, either way, if they're an incumbent or a challenger, is write them back and say, where does this candidate stand? And we have the pledge to amend. I don't know if we really talked about that during this live stream, but that is one of our programs. It's a strategy to get candidates to go on record saying that they will support this issue if elected. And especially when they're in like lower offices, they're more likely to do that. And you might catch them as they get, you know, higher up if they're aspirational. You always have that evidence that they pledged that, and it can be really powerful. But sending them the link to the pledge to amend and saying you have, you know, if you, even if you know you're going to vote for them anyway, you should still do this and say, I will vote for you if you sign this pledge to amend. And that really helps our organizing too. So something to keep in mind during midterm season. I didn't really have much to say beyond that, but I'm just really glad that you all showed up.
Well, if I might, just for a minute, you know, on top of everything else that's going on out there in the world and people trying to keep up with all the news, the barrage, it is daunting. I get it. We get it. And particularly given how some of the issues, whether it's the economic concerns out there or, you know, you can't vacation in Yellowstone Park now because of the flooding. I mean, there's just so many things. But layered on top of that right now are these hearings going on that I know some people are paying very close attention to and investing not just a considerable amount of physical time, but emotional energy. And it is of concern. There's no question about it. When there is an insurrection that has taken place. But, you know, we have had, let's be honest, we have had an ongoing insurrection of our government for a very, very long time. Not, if you will, human, but of legal. A legal insurrection by these artificial entities that have invaded the political space to prevent our voices and our ability to influence and to have our elected representatives, who oftentimes it's tough enough, is it not, to have them, even if it's a level playing field, listen to us. But at least there's been an opportunity, but it's been made all that more difficult when our Constitution and amendments have been insurrected or hijacked, as they have for more than a century. We've never, ever had anything remotely approaching a decent democracy from day one, but it has been made insurmountably harder because of the legal insurrection by these entities that have prevented what should be, you know, legitimate, authentic governance. And a lot of the concern people have right now is because of the disconnect politically between what our public officials say and do and what people want. It's not close at all. And a lot of that has to do with this legal insurrection. So we are about the business of trying to end that. I mean, let the people do the, you know, the human part through the committee hearings and the like. But we have been about the business for a very long time related to this legal hijacking of what should be a clear route and channel of our concerns going to those who directly are to represent us. And even more so when there are opportunities to directly create law through, in many states, citizen initiatives or referendums that have been hijacked, again, because of corporate money or the ability to go to the courts to say, no, that initiative is unconstitutional. To try to have, for example, only family farmers own the land that they govern on. That sort of law that was passed by citizen initiative in many Midwestern states, Nevada, I should say Nebraska, the Dakotas, and the like, have been overturned democratically or undemocratically by the courts because it's against the Contracts Clause or against the 14th Amendment. So we're about the business of stopping this legal insurrection that is going on and will continue to go on forever and ever unless we stop it.
And you know, Greg's, I'm not sure if I can do what I want to do here, but I'll try. What Greg was saying about the legal hijacking, we have a worked with an artist to create a cartoon that really demonstrates that pretty well. Oh, there we go. Alfonso put it up. Here, I think if I can share my screen. Can I do that? I'm almost there. Nope. Let's see. I am not making.
As she is working on that, please don't forget to share this video. We're going to have a recording posted right after this on the page that you registered, movetoamend.org/live. You can also share this on all of your social media platforms. We have this going on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So please share as you can. We really want to get this out to folks who are not yet familiar to Move to Amend. And, you know, we do have a menu of ways to get involved. If you cannot make a donation today, please make sure you have signed our petition on our website, movetoamend.org/motion. Also, check out some of the other resources that we have on there. We have several campaigns of which we've mentioned. Pledge to Amend. You can put candidates and elected officials on the spot. Say, hey, is it okay for corporate rule to exist? Are you going to do something about it? Yes? Great. Here's a way that you can get involved. Support the We the People Amendment. And they publicly take a stance on that. And then we can put that out to the supporters in the area. We also, of course, our amendment is in Congress with 93 co-sponsors, the most we've ever had. So if your representative is not yet a co-sponsor, please call them every week. We also, if yours is already on board, we encourage people to aid in getting neighboring districts on board, helping them have meetings with their representatives, pushing them, again, to take a stance and support the We the People Amendment in Congress. Are we maybe in a ready place to share that now?
I think Alfonso's worrying about it, working on it. Let's see, is there another? Yeah, so far, no.
Perfect. I'll tell you about more of the ways that you can plug in. We have recently shifted more into advocate positions. We do have Move to Amend working groups as well as affiliates, but we also want you to be able to continue the work that you're already doing in your community. As you know, by listening to this live stream, we're all very engaged, not just in Move to Amend, but other areas. So an advocate, a Move to Amend advocate, is a way for you to continue in the ways that you're already plugged in the ways and work organizations that you're already involved in, and wear that Move to Amend hat. Again, building a movement strong enough to pass this amendment is going to take everyone working together, that knows that the issues that they care the most about are being held back by corporate rule. And as we have highlighted again and again, the We the People Amendment is the only amendment to address both of the big pieces on the table, right? Not just money in politics, but the precedent of that, which is corporate constitutional rights. So please, please, please continue to share this event. If you have not already, you can make a donation on our website. We are very close to making our t-shirt drawing for those of you who have given more than, or have given a one-time donation of $100 or more, or signed up to be a monthly donor. As a grassroots organization, monthly sustainerships are a huge way that we can actually prioritize projects, look ahead, budget. So consider that. All of us on staff are current monthly sustainers. As you know, we believe in this wholeheartedly and know that one of the ways that we need this to continue is through financial support. So please move to amend.org/donate. All donations up to $25,000 will be currently matched. Who else would like to do a little ditty if we are waiting for the cartoon? Or perhaps this is it and we're ready for the drawing.
Well, I have a question for you, Millie.
Oh, enticing. Go for it, Greg.
Yeah. Just get a pencil and paper handy, because this may be pretty hard to sort of figure out. But how many organizations have that are working on fundamental change like Move to Amend has actually a bill introduced in Congress that has substantial number of co-sponsors and has over 600 organizations of very diverse backgrounds and has over 700 communities that have endorsed this by either citizen initiative in communities, many of the communities having endorsed quote unquote conservative candidates, and has nearly 500,000 people who have signed up in support of this.
Exactly one, Greg. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I really want to highlight a number here for you. When he said that over 700 local resolutions have been passed, I really want us to just give a moment to how much time that actually takes. Because it is not easy to pass anything on the local level. It takes a lot of support. It takes talking to every single person you know, getting every single petition signature you can, expecting that a third of those petition signatures are not even going to work to get it on the ballot, or however your initiative resolution is shaped. It is an amazing, tremendous accomplishment that communities come together, unite around the fact that corporate rule is a huge impediment to our well-being.
And operate on a shoestring.
That's right. You can't get scrappier than us. So with that, please, please, please continue to share this video, as well as make donations, sharing this with everyone who is not already plugged in. Perhaps they were years ago and they need a reminder. We don't often get the opportunity to have all of our donations matched. And this didn't come from one donor. This didn't come from a foundation. This didn't come from a grant. This came from a handful of individuals who fundamentally believe that this is the way to proceed in the immediate future. So, a big, thank you to all of the folks who, and most of them not only are donors, they are organizers in their community, working to pass the We the People Amendment. And, right, as we know from our conversation today, many, many, many other hats. So thanks to you, we have this opportunity. If you make a donation before June 19th, it will be matched. We need to make our $25,000 goal to make that happen. So please, please, please share this in every way you can and contribute if you are able. All right, y'all. Well, I guess we'll let you go. We've only held you here for 2 hours. We're going to make our t-shirt announcement. We have 3 winners for tonight. Let me get that little mixer-upper thing. Okay, so we want... We want to thank Richard Blake. He is one t-shirt winner located in Chelsea, Michigan. Thank you, Richard. Another t-shirt winner. This is spinning, excuse me, is Lisa Oliver, who is in California. We will be following up with both of you. And let's see, we have one more. Who can it be? And don't worry. If you really need a t-shirt and you didn't win, we have them available on our website. Great conversation starter. What is Move to Amend? Tell us more about it. How can you plug in? We're going to drop that link in the chat as well. And then our third winner is Ellen Leonard. Let me give you a location for fun. In Conway, New Hampshire.
All right. Lots of regions represented with our t-shirts. Thanks to everyone who donated, and congrats on the winners.
All right. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday and a precious full moon, last spring full moon as we spring into summer. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.